this is my version of how to do an elastic bracelet. You'll need your temporary beading needle made from tiger tail, which is just, you know, a V shape of tiger tail, and about a meter of elastic thread. Now I use 0.5 because I like to do my thread double, so I've got about a meter. Elastic thread's very inexpensive, so it doesn't matter if you waste a little. Now what I'll do is I'm going to bring my two ends together, and I'm going to just tie a simple overhand knot. So just make a loop and bring the ends through. And then just make a knot. Now it doesn't matter what sort of a knot, it's only temporary. It's just to stop, to keep my thread from running amok. So now I'll come down to the other end where I have the loop, and all it remains for me is to thread on my temporary beading needle, hold the ends together. I've got my beads all laid out, my lovely agate beads, and so all it remains for me to do is to thread on a bead. And if you work with them flat on the mat, just like that, you can easily just thread away and until you're ready to tie the knot. So I'll just thread these on. So I've just put on hopefully what's my last bead, and I'll measure for size. So I can just take my needle off nice and easily and just hold the two ends together at this point to make it, you know, slightly circular, and pop your wrist through. And then for me, I'm happy with that. You don't want it to be tight so that the elastic's like that. It should just be nice and loose so that you can just wear it comfortably. So I'm happy with that. So now what I'm going to do is I want to finish off. Now I've got two strands, and I've got a loop at this end, and I've got a knot at this end. Now it's time for me, I don't need this knot anymore, so I'm just going to take a pair of scissors and I'm just going to cut it off. And what I'm going to do is make a fish. Now how I'm going to do that, here's my head and here's my fishy tail. Now I'm really sorry, it's very hard to see this thread, but it's meant to be invisible. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make this head a little bit smaller by threading the beads along, just a little bit smaller. Okay, don't lose it inside though. Now then what I'm going to do is I've got two strands here and here at this end. I'm going to take one strand and I'm going to put it inside my little fish's head, so inside this loop. When I do that and I pull on both ends, I can just pull it up and pull it up very slowly, very slowly. You can see it's going up and up and up, and see the little head is getting smaller and smaller as I get there, and now it's gone. And now I've got a complete circle, and I've got something to tie onto to begin to tie my knots. So you can see there's the little loop right there inside. So now I'm going to tie my knots. So I'm going to start with just an ordinary overhand knot. So it's just left over right and through the middle. And I'm going to bring it in, and I'm going to bring it in nice and close, but then I'm going to tug on the elastic. Now this you have to be careful. You need to tug it, come in close, Give it a good tug, but don't tug it so far or hard that you break the elastic. So you just have to gauge the pull. So then I'm going to do that a few more times, because what's going to happen is when I do this, and you need to do it a minimum of 5 times, I'm not going to end up with a great big wad of knots. The knots are going to travel along the thread, and you'll see this in a moment. I'll show you. And see, I'm tightening it between each knot. So there's 3, 4, and this method's great because you don't need to use any glue. Now I've done 5 knots, and it's important that you do a minimum of 5 so that it's really secure. The nice thing about this way of doing knots, and I'll just pull it out and show you, is you see here, there's my knots, if you can see them. And see, instead of being on top of each other, they travel along the thread there. So I've got my 5 knots going one after the other along the thread. Can you see that? So of course that's so much easier than to hide inside the bead. Now I'm ready to do my last 2 knots, and this time I'm going to do a couple of doubles. So this time I go through once this way, hold the knot, and see this thread's on top. I'm going to bring it underneath and through, so that then, as you see here, I've got quite a lot of knots happening. And then when I pull that in and pull that in tight, that's really secure. And I'm just going to do 1 more of those. So through that way, hold the knot, that one's on top, bring it underneath and through, so that I've got lots of knots there. Bring it in slowly, you'll really feel it, and then pull it in nice and tight. Now, all that remains for me to do, and you can see it's almost invisible here, there's no big knot. All that remains for me to do now is I'll pull it out, and you can see all the knots there. I'm just going to hold it, and I'm going to bring in my scissors, and you see the knots finish here. I'm just going to cut it here with the tiniest little bit of tail, and then I'll just carefully thread this knot till it pops inside the bead. Went right through. And again, get in there. There we go, all inside. One nice elastic bracelet.